condition my entire being, my eyes, my ears, my thinking, my hands. Because everything in namaz is now under zabt. You can't do what you want internally, externally. It is all what Allah has ordered at this particular moment in sajda, qiyam, whatever, and what do this. Acha. So that's quite easy to understand in ibadat. But now how do we have this concept, transfer it to a guy sitting on the machine? This task of sitting on the machine and sealing up the miswak, it should develop you. Yeah, ye challenge. Is this right?
Yeah.
So making a comb, thought about craftsman to waki, a guy used to make, a metal thing from brass or from wood or from ivory. In the case of now you can't even have ivory; they'll put you in jail. Because you had to, yeah. So that's quite thinkable, and I myself have seen this in my childhood. Craftsmen had pride in their, and they used to. But today the challenge is most of the work is quite mundane and mechanical. So how do we turn that task into a means of developing this person so that he becomes a better person, perhaps more quality conscious, more effective or efficiency conscious, and will that have an impact on his religious life? And will that have an impact on his being more acceptable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Ultimately, this is the concept. Abstract, yes. Maybe mushkil, yes. But doable, I think it's, I think this is a big challenge for us. If we can have some simple way of translating this, let's see. I'm sorry, this is Faisal's platform. Let's see what he's come up with.
The point is that we have to focus on the specific task, not the general task. अलखैर का बिजनेस है नहीं, इस वक्त मैं जो टास्क कर रहा हूँ वो टास्क मुझे कैसे डेवलप कर सकता है. तो और वो टास्क चेंज होता रहता है. तो कभी आप नमाज में हैं, कभी आप काम में हैं, कभी आप रोज़े से हैं, कभी सफ़र में हैं. तो ये वाला टास्क मुझे कैसे डेवलप कर सकता है. तो फिर मैंने जब उसमें ढूंढा तो जैसे शेख ने बताया तो कुरान शरीफ में ये आया था. शेख ये मैंने करेक्ट किया, आई एम नॉट एन आलिम सो आई please correct me wherever there's a need for correction. So you recite what is sent of the book by inspiration to you and establish regular prayer. For prayer restrains you from shameful and unjust deeds.
Great.
इसमें कोई सवाल है, समझ आ रहा है ये?
Basically what you're trying to say is that just like salat very obviously and directly has its impact on the person. So how do we find all the various tasks that our people are working, ourselves included, how those tasks can become means of developing them into better human beings and thereby making them more quality in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Qualities that will increase them in their qualities of ubudiyah. Asan ye koi challenge, Nobody's thinking like that, because what the other part of it is when we say this is one of the key concepts at Al-Khair, or now it's become UBM, is that the task is to develop the man, not the man is here for the task. HR would tell you, this is a task, find a man who can do it. If you find a machine, you're better off, because then you don't have to pay him this and that. So man is basically taken the position of a machine, and he is just a means of an end, which is producing the product which generates revenue. The main concept that we're trying to have here is no, the man is the main guy. The product is for the man. Similarly, the task is for developing the man. So, kya matlab? Man is here to do the work. Chalo, hum kuch kaam kar rahe. That's what he's here for. So this is quite a revolutionary concept, but it will be a turnkey concept, because when we start thinking that, and that goes back to the whole concept that we are here to develop and care for our people. Kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyati. I am a shepherd, I'm responsible for my flock. So I'm responsible for developing this guy. So he's working 8 hours on the machine. So how is 8 hours working on the machine becomes a means of developing him? Yeah, I'm responsible, end of the day. But Revolutionary thinking for the modern world, materialistic. Sorry, Faisal.
You're most welcome. How to develop taqwa?
Do you mean to say that fasting is a means of developing taqwa?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
ये कुर्बानी के हवाले से इट्स नॉट द मीट नॉट दैट टीचर्स ऑफ दैट इज योर तकवा दैट टीचर्स तो कुर्बानी से अगर हमारा तकवा इंक्रीज नहीं हो रहा तो फिर वो कुर्बानी वही उसी तरह की होगी जैसे आजकल हो रही है.
It increases our takabbur actually. Usually. ये कितना 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 40,000 हाँ नहीं 50,000. I never used to I never ceased to be amazed. Every Qurbani, they call it Bakri Eid. It's not Bakri Eid, it's Eid al-Adha. It's a Qurbani Eid. It's an Eid that Qurbani, not a Bakri, kind of ghostly. In our building where I used to live, nobody has anything about it. There's no discussion of this. Huh, kitna say? How much you paid? How much you paid? Everybody's a business guy over there, all the business community. But it should actually. So, these all things are there to develop taqwa. Say what?
When they hear his science results, find their faith strengthened, get all their trust in their Lord. तो हम जब कुरान शरीफ पढ़ रहे हैं तो ये भी एक टास्क है ना. तो क्या हम उसे सुन भी रहे हैं या पढ़ के किताब बंद की और वापस हो गए. अगर सुन रहे हैं तो हमारा ईमान इंक्रीज होना चाहिए. उस टास्क का एक मकसद है, वो टास्क का मकसद पूरा होना चाहिए.
सुनना मतलब समझना.
But generally, does it or not? When we read Quran, we feel our iman going up. Is that what happens? Maybe, maybe not. I've seen people, these Punjabi fellows and Pathan fellows, in gowns especially. You'll find that they come to the masjid a half an hour before, and until Ishraq, especially I've gone to even Abu Dhabi, I remember. In Saudi Arabia, we went in some place in the desert, and there were Pakistani workers, Punjabi guys. Half hour before namaz, they were there reading Quran. And until Ishraq, they would read Quran. And just looking at these guys, they don't understand a single word of what they're reading. But I was looking at these guys, and I was feeling my iman even. So what about them? I mean, itna wo hai ya itna. So ye zururi nahi. It will help you. And that is a maqsad, it is a taqaza. We should understand the Quran. But for the raising of iman, إِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. They didn't say, إِذَا تُلِيَتْ وَفَهِمْتُمْ. Tuliyat. Why? Because they know this is Allah's command. Dhukir Allah. Mention the name of Allah. Iman Bangi. So when we read Quran and we don't see that, so actually this ayat is not actually how do we get taqwa. This ayat is a meter of whether we have taqwa or not. Because this is what we call alamat al-iman. Innamal mu'minuna alladhina idha. So it means if we have iman, then this will happen. If we don't have iman, it means that you need to go back to the workshop, get it tuned up, because iman is not, you don't feel your iman raising when you read Quran, and the name of Allah is mentioned, you don't, wajilat qulubum, your hearts don't tremble, but matlab aapka iman ko kuch hai. There's some blackness there, it needs to be cleaned up. Maulana Saad, he usually talks about that. Nishaniya. Our Ustaz who taught us this ayat, he's an Egyptian guy, blind. Old style Azhari with the old, this guy, mashallah. So he said, now look at this, either dhukira. Dhukira is what we call mabni al-majhul. It doesn't say who's mid. If they remember Allah, if somebody remembers Allah, both Achi Qari remembers Allah. It's either dhukira. If Allah's name is mentioned, anybody, Anyhow, you probably read that story. You might have heard that story. Some fellow was walking and he saw the name of Allah. Some was written, and he got Gabra and he took it and kissed it and put itar on it and put it up on it. Huh? Wallahu alam. So if Iman is there, just the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it just, he says, Jo bhi dhakir, anybody who's dhakir. And the same with إِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. And it's the same thing he said for these, whether he reads this or he happens to hear and we hear the Quran is being recited and we go on with our discussions. Which is haram, number one. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the order that when the Quran is read, you listen carefully. And we don't listen. Nay, well, recording jo bhi ho, don't get technical. Nay, fatwa hai, okay, I'll leave the fatwa aside. Is this Allah's kalam or not? Yeah. So your kalam is more important than that? So listen. When the azan is being, this is a dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the azan is being called, we're supposed to stop everything. And listen to that. Because this is da'wat tamma. So we don't. We can carry on our conversation. नहीं अहम काम है, ये बहुत ज़रूरी काम है. क्या ज़रूरी काम? कितना प्रोडक्शन हो गया, कितना ये वो ये. उनका नकीर कोई, they're not worried about that, They're worried about this. So it means that since we don't have these qualities, it means, so these are nishaniya, these are, meters. This is a mi'ayar. So it means that we have maslah. And as Rasul says, these hearts are like, like steel. If the water comes on and it's not polished, what happens? Rust. Rust, see, it stays the same, or after technical admi, to what happens?
It finishes the metal.
And in Seaview, what happens? Every year, if you don't really take care, then it'll eat it. So ultimately, the heart just gets tuck, and sooner or later, the heart is not even there. Then people can do the atrocities that's going on in the world. कैसे हो सकते? कैसे हो सकते? वो إن في ذلك لذكرى لمن كان له قلب. The Quran has, this is a dhikr and it will remind people who have a heart. The heart is eaten up or black or gone, so you can't expect any effect. Okay, I'm sorry, again.
I have to say. अच्छा, पिछली आयत की ही आगे की आयत हैं. Who establish regular prayers and spend freely out of the gifts we have given them for sustenance. Such include other believers. They have grades of dignity with their Lord and forgiveness and generous sustenance. अगर हमें अपने दर्जात बढ़ाने हैं तो this is what we need to do. आगे बढ़ो.
Sure. So what you're trying to tell us is that these amal, which are definitely very clearly ibadat,
Yeah.
these are means of developing ourselves. So these are tasks which develop us. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
तो एक तो इंसान का मकसद इबादत है, तो इबादत तो करनी है और उसके लिए पैदा किया गया, लेकिन उन इबादत में हमारी डेवलपमेंट के मैकेनिज़म्स भी बिल्ड किए गए हैं. तो सिर्फ ये नहीं कि हम इबादत करके और अपना फ़र्ज़ पूरा कर लिया, बल्कि कि उससे हम मज़ीद डेवलप हो रहे हैं, अल्लाह ताला की उबूदियत की तरफ जा रहे हैं या नहीं जा रहे, वो भी हमें देखने की ज़रूरत है. That is, if I frame this correctly.
I think so. Now, again, so these ibadat developing us, that's very clear. Now our mundane tasks, how we transform those, that's the, I'm still very curious to see
How?
मंडेन टास्क के अंदर भी यही चीज है ना कि अगर आप मिसाल के तौर पर आपने कोई जिम्मेदारी
पूरी कर रहे हैं, तो आपको वो पूरी करते हुए ये डर तो रहे ना कि भाई इसके ऊपर मेरे से सवाल होगा, मैंने अल्लाह को जवाब देना है।
ऐसे ही
अगर आप अपनी जिम्मेदारी पूरी करते वक्त जो भी फर्निश कर रहे हैं, मकसद है अगर हम फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर आप सोलो ही प्लेयर हैं, यानी आपका टीम के अंदर काम नहीं है, आपका ये काम है मैंने एक फला शीट बनानी है, तो मैं वो शीट उस कमाल के साथ बना रहा हूँ जो कि मेरा मेरा नॉलेज बेस है, या मैं बस ये कह रहा हूँ ठीक है शीट टिका दो कोई बात नहीं देखी जाएगी, वो बस कार्रवाई एक होता है ना कर देता प्रोग्राम होता है पूरा, ये काम तो कर दिया बस ठीक है, वो काम हो तो गया, कसम खा सकते हैं ये काम हो गया, लेकिन उसमें वो शिद्दत नहीं आपने डाली, वो अपना दिल से नहीं उस काम को किया। एक है कि जी पूरे लगन के साथ जो आपको अल्लाह ने सलाहियत दी है उसको पूरे को बरूए कार लाते हुए आपने एक बेहतरीन काम उसको अपनी जो भी समझ थी, अब ज़ाहिर बात आप अपनी समझ के मुताबिक ही कर सकते हैं, उससे बड़ा तो नहीं कर सकते, लेकिन उसमें खुलूस हो, तो वो अगर हम ये चीज़ तरीके से अपना डेली काम कोई भी कर रहे हैं, चाहे वो थैली में मसवाक डाल रहे हैं क्यों ना हो, तो वो फिर ये समझ आएगी कि हाँ ये उबूदियत की लेवल पे जाकर के काम हो रहा है, या ये जो है वो हम उससे
तो see लगन हर किस्म हर आमा we can apply that लगन.
We can apply
So
that.
we learn some लगन, we learn how to apply ourselves, and we can transfer that.
ट्रांसफर आएगा, मेरे तो यही समझ में आता है, मतलब है कि this is how you can learn from ibadat and apply on your daily routines to make them indirect ibadat.
I think Hassan Bhai has something.
If I may, all this present company and knowledge, I feel very humble. One of the things that may be of help is because I believe it's probably very difficult to be cautiously be at a same level of philosophical abstraction that you're doing a mundane task and every morning, every day, and you go and do it 20,000 times or 100 times, and you're thinking consciously about the entire concept of the task is not the man and all man is for the task.
The guy on the front line, how does he?
It's very, very difficult to achieve that. Theoretically, yes, that'd be great if I can do that. But I think what may be of help is if a particular zikr is associated with whatever you do. When we learn to drive a car, those of us who learn to ride a bicycle, in that initial phase of learning, you're very cautious, right? So I'm pressing the clutch, what is happening. But then ultimately it becomes, it's just, you don't even think about it and it's happening.
Subconsciously.
If you swim, so you're swimming, right? But when you're learning to it, you're very conscious about each stroke and how you go about. Even your breathing is a very cautious way of breathing if you're swimming. So if you, for example, if one goes from home to the office, factory, wherever, you associate a scar with that, make it habit. So, if you look at ibadat, they are also there to inculcate certain, habits through mere repetition. Similarly, if, for example, if every evening or thrice a week I go for swimming, a few years back I started doing that. One stroke of whatever swim I'm doing, so I associated a little zikr with that. So, and now it's just cautious. I don't think about it. I'm swimming and I'm just doing that. And even so someone like me can do that. I'm sure anyone can do that. So if it's a matter of it. If you're doing maswak, so there's a job for somebody here who picks up the maswak and puts it in the
He says
packet.
Bismillah at least.
So this is Bismillah or whatever. And so you can have that little maybe little instruction or little something and go through the mechanism of inculcating that. Somebody is a computer programmer or a typist who sits and types, all right, you're doing it for 5 hours, 3 hours a day, here's our scars for that. Just don't even think about it. Just keep on reciting. Every aspect of everything, and that's, if you look at, Sheikh, if you look at the Masnoon Askar, in fact, that is where it takes us. You're climbing up the stairs, climbing up, Allahu Akbar. Going down, you say Subhanallah, you do this, you say that. Everything that we do, you do wuzu, you go into the washroom, you come out of the washroom, You get up in the morning, what is it? The masnoon is that every task is associated uh, uh, with a
Allah's zikr.
zikr, with a
Yeah,
zikr.
absolutely. But the dhikrullahi
Yeah.
akbar. Great.
The idea, I think,
Thank
related
you.
to that, the idea is that this is how you remember Allah all the time,
Yes.
while doing whatever you are doing.
Yes.
So the remembrance of Allah should be there. So when you have the remembrance, then the fear would be that I might not. And the one that you were talking about, ki gaadi chalana and all, that is basically a DMR, decision making routine.
जी.
बिकॉज पहली दफा आप जो कर रहे होते हैं वो ये कि पहले गियर पे 10 तक स्पीड ले जाएंगे, फिर देख देख के स्पीडोमीटर से चला रहे होते हैं ना, फिर उसके बाद आपको खुद ही फील हो जाती है कि ये मैंने किधर जाके जो है ना गियर बदलना है और किधर नहीं बदलना है। तो वो है, और इसमें यही चीज़ है कि ये सारी अज़कार का बिल्कुल सही आपने फरमाया कि भाई मकसद यही है कि आपको हर अमल करते वक्त ये याद रहे कि अल्लाह ताला की याद आपके दिल में रहे।
हज़रत डॉक्टर अब्दुल हई रहमतुल्लाह अलैह से किसी ने, उनके शागिर्दों में से किसी ने कहा कि हज़रत अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह मुझे नमाज में एहसान की कैफियत हासिल हो गई। तो हज़रत ने उनको जवाब में फरमाया, अल्लाह करे पूरी ज़िंदगी में ये कैफियत हासिल हो जाए।
हाँ,
इस्तकामत।
या अल्लाह के इस्तेहज़ार।
तो अब मैं जो
एहसान क्या होते हैं?
एक्सीलेंस।
Excellence.
मैं
It is excellence.
It
But
is,
what
but-
is excellence in ibadat? أن تعبد ربك كأنك تراه. To worship Allah as though you see Him. I'm seeing Allah and I'm praying, you know. He's watching me. And I'm seeing Him watching me. And if you can't do that, then the next level is that I'm aware that He's seeing me. I know He's there, but I'm conscious all the time that He's seeing me. So that's the second level. What he's saying is so the guy in the machine, so what you're saying, so when he's in zikr, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allah's seeing. Allah's aware, Allah's gauging. So this is, as it says in Hawluhu Yubandin, around this topic where all the discussion goes. And the end of the day, it's to remain in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all of it. Absolutely.
How can we suggest that to start with, there can be a niyat of that person doing a mundane task to start with?
अभी उस पर अभी आते हैं।
अच्छा।
अच्छा, ये मुझे बहुत ही वो इंटरेस्टिंग लगा था कि जब वहाँ पर कोई मुश्किल आती है ना, कोई मुसीबत आती है, तो इसका मकसद अगर हमारे अंदर ह्यूमिलिटी पैदा नहीं हो रही तो फिर हमने उससे इस डेवलपमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटी को मिस कर दिया। क्योंकि अल्लाह ताला फरमा रहे हैं कि हमने उनको मुसीबत में डाला तो फिर भी उन्होंने नहीं ह्यूमिलिटी नहीं हासिल की, अपने
It didn't humble them.
It didn't humble them.
Yeah.
दो ही बातें होती है ना, वो कहते हैं कि किसी में मुसीबत आए तो उसके दो रिजल्टेंट हो सकते हैं। एक तो ये है कि वो अल्लाह की तरफ ज़्यादा राग़िब हो जाएगा, या वो बिल्कुल ही फारिग हो जाएगा। तो ये वो जो
So the question comes here that in Pakistan we're really in trouble. Huh? If the musibat or humility level is very, you know. So anyway, khair. चलो।
अच्छा, तो जो मैं एक किताब को पढ़ के समझा कि जो अम्बिया अलैहिस्सलाम थे उनको भी अल्लाह ताला ने उनकी डेवलपमेंट के लिए टास्क ही मुकर्रर किया सबसे पहले, नबूवत देने से पहले, कि उनको सबको चरवाहा बनाया।
Why do you say that? I was trying to come up with that word yesterday. How do you say it?
चरवाहा।
Charwaha. Charwaha. अच्छा ठीक है।
तो ये फिर पहले तो एक जॉन एडेयर की किताब में पढ़ा था मैंने, फिर मुसलमानों की किताब में भी पढ़ा कि ये उसमें हिकमत ये थी तमाम अम्बिया अलैहिस्सलाम को पहले चरवाहा काम देने की, कि वो काफ़ी मुश्किल काम है और उसमें वो सारी क्वालिटीज़ इंसान में आ जाती हैं जो नबूवत का काम आगे बढ़ाने के लिए चाहिए।
ग्रुप मैनेजमेंट।
If you manage all those bakris, then you're really good. No? Even Nabi Sallallahu did that, as we know. And Nabi Sallallahu was asked, and he told this, that every ma min nabiyyin illa wara al-ghanam. There's not been any Nabi except that he has actually been a rai of ghanam. Not horses and not camels. Because the people who graze camels and horses, they develop arrogance generally. Therefore, it's also mentioned in Hadith that those people who are, all around the horses and camels, so they start acting. Camel Camel is such that, you know, if the camel, very interesting thing of camels, if they're in the male camel is with the female camel, you know, in the act of reproduction, and anybody sees, he'll kill you.
Oh,
He'll kill you.
oh,
And if he sees you 20 years later, he'll kill you. So either you kill him or he won't let you live. He cannot. So ghairat in camels is something, you know, and therefore the people eat the meat of the camels. These Arabs, you know, eat the camel meat. Oh my God. Don't look at any of their women, you'll be gone.
But they can
No,
look
they
at
can't.
any
They can't.
woman.
No, they cannot. They cannot tolerate any kind of.
वो
Achha, it's
वो किसके
interesting.
गोट से आती है जो
It's
इतना ज्यादा
interesting
देखते हैं?
also that you will find the in Balochistan they eat camel also perhaps. Acha, so we don't want to.
चले.
Okay, so what happened is that, so this is also suhbat. Now ghanam, you know, sheep and goats, they're humble kind of thing, and you develop humility in having to deal with them. Whereas horses and, you know, unfortunately we are from the horse people. My father is a great horseman, and he said the last thing I would do is accept Islam or even think about religion. Unfortunately, he's a great horse trainer actually, yeah, among many other things. So the Sahaba said, and even you, Ya Rasulullah, said, yes, I used to look after the sheep for a small amount that was given to me for the people of Quraysh. And this started out his career, first looking after sheep. Then he was upgraded, and ultimately looking after human beings and the entire insanity. Khair.
और ये आई एम श्योर आप लोगों को पता होगा कि शेपर्ड जो होता है वो क्या क्या काम कर रहा होता है. सुबह लेके जाना है अपनी बकरियों को, उनके ऊपर मुसलसल नज़र रखनी है कि वो कोई इधर से उधर ना निकल जाए, रेवड़ से बाहर ना हो जाए, कोई उनके ऊपर हमला ना कर दे, और उनके सही जगह लेके जाना है, खाना पिलाना उनका पूरा हो जाए, फिर शाम को वापस उन्हें लेके आना हिफाजत के साथ. ये पूरा तो उसमें ये सबसे ज़्यादा ये टास्क हेल्प करता है. अल्लाह बेहतर जानते हैं, लेकिन ऑब्वियसली यही टास्क है कि वो हेल्प करता है नबूवत के काम में को सही तरह सर अंजाम देने. तो यहाँ से फिर हम आगे
तो ज़्यादा सख्ती करें तो भी बकरियों के लिए ठीक है.
सही.
जी हाँ.
अब तो हम सब लीडरशिप रोल्स में ही हैं, तो सबसे पहले हम अपनी बात कर लेते हैं. तो ये सही लग रहा है क्या? What should be the task of a leader? Develop his people through their tasks and develop himself through his task.
And one of his main tasks is to develop, to see that they're developing themselves through his task, and he's developing.
Yeah.
So it's a cycle. Yeah, wonderful, very good. Allah tawfiq ata farmaye.
सही. तो अभी हम कुछ एग्जांपल्स देखेंगे जो हम बात कर रहे थे ना कि
एग्जांपल दें जो आप पीछे
आते हैं, उस पर आते हैं. ज़रा पहले हम नीचे के एग्जांपल्स कुछ देखते हैं कि अगर समवन हु इज रिस्पांसिबल फॉर कुकिंग,
हाँ खुला में लेकिन
तो हम अपने टास्क पे वापस आ जाएंगे. पहले ज़रा हम नीचे के कुछ टास्क देखते हैं. समवन हु इज रिस्पांसिबल फॉर कुकिंग, हाउ मेनी, आप वाली बात आई, हाउ मेनी इंटेंशंस कैन यू मेक?
Well, in Al-Khair it would be
he will.
चार नंबर की बात हो रही है.
मैं पर्सनल थोड़ी हो रहा हूँ. ठीक है. What are the Q2s in his job? हो सकता है ये बात सही है कि the most successful people are those who spend most of their time in their Q2s. तो फिर इस जॉब के Q2s क्या है? If cooking takes 40 minutes, what azkar can you perform in the process? ये
ये
हसन भाई ने मेरी प्रेजेंटेशन पहले भी देखी थी.
It's interesting I don't know now, they should be doing, but in the early days in Tabligh, if in Khidmat, what they used to do was they used to ensure that you would have one fellow who was more knowledgeable and one fellow who was less knowledgeable. Two people in khidmat. The reason being that because in khidmat, you're cutting vegetables and you're cooking and you're doing stuff. So they spend a lot of time where they wouldn't be in ta'lim or they wouldn't be going and get so how do we ta'lim and ta'lim? So in that cooking process, some ta'lim and ta'lim, and the Amir would ask, okay, during your cooking, kya ho gaya? And your Q2s, for example, how do you plan your cooking so that now you'll be there in ta'lim and you'll be there in gasht, you'll be there. So that would be very, a management process, that how you would manage to do all that. And if ladies learn how to do that, and ladies are very good at that, because they have to now do all these other things, and in between time, somehow,
You have to burn the food.
yeah, yeah. That's right. While cooking, can we? Can we first of all contemplate on the things that we're cooking? Allah's qudrat, Allah's ni'mat, Allah's...
वो जो बात थी ना कि जो हजरत डॉक्टर दुलही रहमतुल्लाह अलैह ने कहा था कि अल्लाह करे पूरी ज़िंदगी में एहसान की कैफियत हासिल हो जाए, तो वो जब एहसान की कैफियत हासिल होगी तो मैं ये समझता हूँ ये एग्जाम्पल्स इसमें खुद ब खुद आने शुरू हो जाएंगे कि मैं और क्या कर सकता हूँ, अल्लाह ताला मुझे देख रहे हैं या मैं अल्लाह ताला को देख रहा हूँ उससे अगली से, तो फिर ये तो कुछ भी नहीं है, मुझ जैसे आदमी ने लिखा है, तो फिर तो ये लिस्ट बढ़ती
बहुत
जाएगी।
सारी चीज़ें लिखी। Yeah, absolutely. ये भी बड़ी अजूबा. For example, yesterday I ate karela from our garden. Now you look at that thing, it really looks terrible. It's beautiful, but I mean, it looks like a terrible, dangerous time. So who had the himmat pehle to try to actually taste that and itna karwa hai, to kya karna iske? So how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave hidayat to people to understand that this is ye koi khane ki cheez. Maybe a lot of people had to die in the process, khane ki cheez, khane ki nahi. Mushrooms, ye nahi bade khatarnak hai na.
कौन से वाले कौन सी चीज खाने की और कौन सी जहरीली
ये बड़ी अजूबा है.
जहरीली पता चलने के लिए भी अल्लाह ने क्या क्या तरीकों से वो पता चला.
So all that stuff can go on, ये हमारा फिक्र की बात है. So that we had a presentation on fikr, and we were talking about that, we need to increase our, fikr. We have to start relating everything, looking around us and connecting all the makhluqat and everything going on with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His hikmat and qudrat and ni'mat. So the cook is seeing all of that, He bought, achhi baat.
Someone who's responsible for packing, how many intentions can he make? What are the Q2s in his job?
Why don't we just take this, since this is a hands-on, why don't we just walk through this?
Q2s क्या हो सकते हैं packing?
How many intentions?
अच्छा, intentions,
Let's
okay.
start from the beginning. क्या?
जब मेरे कस्टमर के पास पहुंचे तो बिल्कुल उसी तरह से वो जिस तरह से मैं पैक कर रहा हूँ, तो नुकसान ना हो, जो उसने कीमत अदा की है वो ये बेस्ट क्वालिटी विदाउट डैमेज.
अच्छा, अगर इसको हम उससे लिंक करें कि ये प्रोडक्ट बना किस लिए है,
तो सबसे पहले तो सुन्नत
तो हम कहते हैं हेल्दी एंड मीनिंगफुल लाइफस्टाइल कहते हैं ना हम, तो फिर उस वजह से हमने ये प्रोडक्ट बनाया है. ये प्रोडक्ट फिर कस्टमर के पास पहुंचना है, तो अगर मेरे ख्याल में शुरू से करें तो फिर नियतें ज़रा,
मतलब प्रोडक्ट की ओरिजिन ही क्यों हुई या कंपनी की ओरिजिन क्यों हुई, तो फिर वो ये है कि भाई सुन्नत जिंदा करने की नियत है.
Providing beneficial products aligned with a healthy, meaningful lifestyle.
ब्लैक सीड ऑयल है, उसके साथ हदीस भी है, इसके अलावा उसके बहुत सारे फवायद, वो फवायद जो है वो लोगों तक पहुँचे
बिल्कुल सर.
और वो उस तरह से पहुँचे जिस तरह से उसने चाह रहा है कि क्वालिटी स्टफ उसके पास आए.
और जब हम इससे अगर वो मकसूद शिफा है तो वो शिफा लोगों को मिले, मतलब ये भी एक तरीके से इंटेंशन होगी या दुआ होगी.
Intention, maybe.
Intention.
That you should be a means of, providing people with something that's going to help them and cure their disease. Agar intention ho ke that people should actually, even the non-Muslims should, get out, and they're starting to use. Miswak now is used by a lot of non-Muslims and they really love it. So we can have this intention that these things should reach everybody in the non-Muslims also, and they should start using it and come to know the benefits and say, well, if Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the unlettered, fellow 1400 years said it had this, how did he know that? So that would ultimately take them in Islam. And that happens. I gave you the Sheikh Zindani, when you had all those guys. How did Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam know that? Islam. Hey.
Yes.
Please.
So one thing, sometimes we talk about it in Rifa that on each one of us who's working there, it's a very big, huge, infinite neema and rahmat by Allah Ta'ala that we are associated with. There's so many ways of making money or earning a living. So Allah Ta'ala has given us the privilege and the honor, I think. It's probably one of the greatest blessings I feel, personally and everybody else. I think. We are associated with education and we are associated with healthcare. And Allah Ta'ala has given us the opportunity to work in a halal fashion, in a the mashra that we live in. So I think if we also look at it from this perspective, that anybody who's working in your organization and the example that you've taken, and it's a blessing, it's a huge blessing, it's a favor on him or her who's working here that Allah Ta'ala has given them the chance to work in halal. Maswak and Masnoon, the Prophet ﷺ and the Shifa. This is all for others. First, it's you have to thank Allah Ta'ala for what you have. Rather than feel that I'm doing something awesome for others, you better think about what Allah Ta'ala has done for you first.
And then not only halal, and He's given us opportunity to work in something that's also can benefit others. It's Allah's ni'mat on me. Yeah.
Certainly, that is there. And also the fact that, perhaps also that it's a great ibadah to actually engage in earning halal rizq for your children. And to have that opportunity is a so, even actually have a job in the current situation, rather than we are, talking about, our salary should be more, I should get more bonus. So we need to start thinking and cultivating perhaps this in all of us, I think.
बल्कि मेरे ख्याल से आपकी बात से तो यहाँ पर एक पॉइंट ऐड करना चाहिए कि सबसे पहले कोई भी टास्क अगर हम कर रहे हो तो ये एक सवाल हमें अपने आप से करना चाहिए कि क्या ये टास्क जो हमसे अल्लाह ताला ले रहे हैं इसका हमें शुक्र नहीं अदा करना चाहिए। तौफीक हमें जो दी है, ये सबसे पहले तो मेरा ख्याल है ये इंटेंशन से पहले ये पॉइंटर इसमें डलना चाहिए कि हम जो भी टास्क, मतलब ये तो चले नौकरी का टास्क है, नौकरी का टास्क ना हो घर में, मैं तो कहता हूँ बाथरूम जाने का टास्क है तो शुक्र अदा करो ना भाई, जान छूट रही है।
And then that's what we say when we come
वो
out.
दुआएं, मतलब दुआएं यही हैं सारी।
और ना तो अगर doesn't let it come out, तो क्या करें?
तो मकसद ये है कि ये पॉइंट वैसे इसमें मेरा ख्याल है कि ये बड़ी प्यारी बात है।
हम उसको बिल्कुल इग्नोर कर देते हैं कि ये ब्लेसिंग हम तक पहुंची गई। What I did to deserve it।
मतलब जब ये सोचना शुरू करेंगे तो फिर ये कि मेरे हाथ भी काम कर रहे हैं, मेरी आंखें भी काम कर रही हैं, अल्लाह ताला ने मुझे इस काबिल बना दिया।
So it's Goya, so Goya, that whole talk about fikr, it kind of nurtures that whole thing. And then using that fikr, once that fikr, mode clicks in, so you start using it on all this liquor.
मैं कह रहा था एहसान तक पहुंचने का मैंने एक स्टेप तो शुक्र ही है ना, सबसे बुनियादी चीज वो चीज कैफियत होगी तो इंशाल्लाह ऊपर पहुंचेगा।
असल में मैंने तो ये भी देखा है कि तीन चीजें अगर इंसान करता रहे ना किसी भी तरीके से, और इसका यानी इंसान को इदराक हो, एक है शुक्र, एक है सब्र और एक है इस्तिग़फ़ार। ये तीन चीजें, मतलब इसको ये फिट कहाँ होती है मुझे नहीं पता, लेकिन मतलब मैंने आई रियलाइज कि ये अगर इंसान ये करता रहे ना कि शुक्र, इस्तिग़फ़ार और सब्र, तो बड़ी सारे सवालों के जवाब मिलते चले जाते हैं। वरना ये कि यू आर लेफ्ट अनआंसर्ड फॉर मैनी थिंग्स। लेकिन शुक्र, सब्र और इस्तिग़फ़ार, मतलब ये कि अगर हमारी चीज़ों में आए तो वो उसको आप जिक्र कह लें, या जैसे वो हमारे थे ना कोई काम करते वक्त जिक्र होना चाहिए।
Or shukr, can we define shukr? That needs perhaps differently, because people have a kind of a qusur in their tasawwur of shukr.
Qusur
Usul matlab yani we don't understand the
अच्छा
scope of shukr.
अच्छा हाँ
So shukr actually is defined by the ulama as using the ni'mat in the way which Allah is pleased. Shukr, shukr. Yeah, this is called thana. It's like what we say when we say Allahu Akbar, Subhanakallahumma. This is thana. We're praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's His praise that's due to Him. But did I do shukr? Shukr is that I am thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the nishani? That whatever ni'mat He has given me, I use it according to His pleasure. That is how you thank Allah for the ni'mat. Oh, it's not so easy. And that's why if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, In shakartum la azidannakum. So if you do that, Allah will increase. I read a very interesting bahs, again, productive Muslim. Did you see that? That same lady, there was another thing that, or maybe Khalid Biggs, they did a study. This is a very interesting study that was done by two universities in America. And the study was showing gratitude, what is the ultimate outcome? And those who don't show gratitude, what is the physical outcome? Interesting. These Westerners in research, they're great, They don't know why they're doing it, but they're great in research. They research everything, And they did this, and you will be surprised. But it's not surprising at all because this is what the Quran says. But they actually documented clinically that people who show gratitude, what they're saying is, it appears as though by them doing gratitude, it seems to attract more gratifying results. And it seems to be a snowballing effort, and
There's direct correlation.
so
they established.
now they couldn't get it really together because they don't see the unseen hand there, you see. And they said, and amazingly, those people who are always, ungrateful, then that also seems to bring on them more ungrateful scenarios that make them more and more ungrateful. And then depression and stress and all that, tension and all that stuff. And it's a snowballing effect, you see.
Very interesting. Jay, by any chance, is it possible to get this?
Yeah, I have it. I'll send it to you on my phone.
Productive
I'm not sitting. I'll give you.
That
It
is
is,
प्रोडक्टिव मुस्लिम
absolutely amazing.
ये आर्टिकल
Yeah, that's one of Suleiman's guys. Actually, he did workshop, and then he's a very amazing. This guy.
वेबसाइट
Yeah, he's got some. Yeah,
प्रोडक्टिव मुस्लिम इज द वेबसाइट
Productive Muslim. Just see it.
This report is on that.
Yeah, this guy, he calls himself Abu Productive.
आपको प्रोडक्टिव
That's an Arab guy, He's in UK. Very interesting. He's got some good stuff on it. And interestingly, the women write wonderful stuff. So one lady yesterday, she wrote a tremendous thing. So point is that when we use the ni'mat and we do actual shukr, so Allah's mantar goes on increasing. And if we don't show shukr, then Allah will start the decreasing syndrome. And we see everything going out. Allah. Sorry, again. So,
More intentions? We want to talk about more intentions?
no, I think what you're saying is absolutely right. Once you start the thinking process, then people will come up with all kinds of stuff. I think once the acid test is we go down on the floor and we start, in a very simple way, throwing out these concepts and see what they'll come up with some great stuff, I'm sure. And then the real thing starts happening.
तो इस किस्म की बातें भी हो सकती हैं. Contemplate over how good presentation makes the product attractive. What could be the applications and implications of this in our lives? Product की पैकेजिंग तो बहुत अच्छी है, प्रोडक्ट अंदर से खराब है. तो पैकेजिंग अच्छी है तो अंदर भी अच्छा ही होना चाहिए. और भी बहुत सारी बातें हो सकती हैं. Someone who's responsible for bookkeeping. How many intentions can he make?
That's pretty direct. Because bookkeeping, you have a lot of, you have to keep the books of all your amal and actions,
So that is why the last point, contemplate over the importance of keeping correct record and all
They all individual reports will be presented. Ah, great.
Productive Muslim.
अच्छा, तो अब हम वापस उस पे आते हैं लीडरशिप के ऊपर। ये हमने स्लाइड देखी थी ना, टास्क ऑफ लीडर। तो इससे भी हम आई थिंक फेमिलियर हैं। ये Q12 कहलाता है, गैलप का एक सर्वे, जो यहाँ पे हमने शायद किया है, सोहेल भाई ने किया था। तो इसमें पहले 10 पॉइंट्स तो वही हैं जो गैलप वाले सर्वे में हैं, 2 पॉइंट्स इसमें ऐड कर दिए। तो ये कुछ इंडिकेटर्स हैं डेवलपमेंट के, मेरे लोग डेवलप हो रहे हैं या नहीं। और अगर इसका जवाब अच्छा आ रहा है तो फिर वो मेरी डेवलपमेंट का भी एक इंडिकेटर है, ऐसा ही ना। तो अब अगर इसमें कोई पहले 10 पॉइंट्स में से कोई पॉइंट हम डिस्कस करना चाहें तो वो भी कर सकते हैं, और वरना ये कि 11th और 12th मैंने ऐड किया है, हम चाहें तो इसमें कुछ और भी ऐड कर दें। माई जॉब हेल्प्स मी अचीव प्रोफेशनल एक्सेलेंस इन माई फील्ड। ये अगर आपका टीम मेंबर कहता है कि ये हो रहा है तो अच्छी बात है। और माई जॉब हेल्प्स मी डेवलप उबूदिया सिफात इन माई सेल्फ। तो ये तो आपकी टीम तो आपके बारे में फीडबैक दे देगी। यही मैं एक सेल्फ असेसमेंट भी कर सकता हूँ कि अगर मैं इस जॉब में, सॉरी जी शेख।
No, I'm just seeing it.
जैसे प्रोफेशनल एक्सेलेंस का तो ये है ना कि ये जो बाकी के सवाल है ना, दे आर ऑल अबाउट प्रोफेशनल एक्सेलेंस एज अ मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट।
हाँ,
मतलब उसको आप मतलब अलग से ऐसे सवाल रखना चाहें तो भी रखें, और न भी रखें तो एज ए मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट यही सारी जो चीज़ें हैं ना, व्हाट इज एक्सपेक्टेड ऑफ मी एट वर्क, फिर इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ माय ओपिनियन, फिर इंफॉर्मेशन एंड द इक्विपमेंट, ये तो खैर उससे रिलेटेड। फिर ये जो है कमिटेड टू डूइंग क्वालिटी वर्क, हेल्प, और ये अपॉर्चुनिटी एंड फ्रीडम टू डू व्हाट आई डू बेस्ट एवरी डे। ये मतलब है कि the whole compendium is about,
Those are generic, but maybe he means the specific.
स्पेसिफिकली उसको रखना चाहे तो रख सकते हैं।
स्पेसिफिकली इसलिए है कि हमने प्रोफेशनल सिफात अलग से डिफाइन की है।
अच्छा, हाँ ठीक है, फाइन। आपको मतलब
Initiative,
उस हवाले से हमारे,
teamwork,
हाँ ठीक है। तो सर इसको सिफात ही लिखें फिर,
हाँ कर लेंगे सिफात
अपने हवाले से। मतलब है कि दैट मीन्स कि जो हमने हमारे कल्चर और उसके लिहाज से जो हमने डिफाइन किया ना, तो वो बड़ा डायरेक्ट रिलेशनशिप, जैसे अबूदिया सिफात हो गया ना, इट रियली टेक्स यू देयर, देन इट विल टेक अस टू आवर थिंग कि भाई ये उससे रिलेटेड है। अदरवाइज वन कैन से कि यार दैट इज आल्सो प्रोफेशनल एक्सीलेंस फॉर दैट मैटर, बट दैट इज मोर जेनेरिक। The above 10 questions are more generic. What we are talking about is specific to our, जो हमने डिसाइड किए हैं कि भाई we will stick to these to start with.
Focus on.
Focus on.
अच्छा, तो अब इसका पहले वाले का जवाब हमें मिल गया, डेवलप हिज पीपल थ्रू देयर टास्क्स। ये इस सर्वे से हमें जवाब मिल जाएगा इसका।
Develop his people through their tasks. हाँ लाया ये आएगा ना जब आप ये खास तौर पे ये जो वर्क कंट्रीब्यूट्स टू द ओवरऑल टारगेट्स, माय जॉब इज इंपॉर्टेंट, फिर कि मेरी जॉब क्या है और क्या नहीं है, ये सब चीज़ें जब आप उसको एक्सप्लेन कर रहे हैं अपने सबऑर्डिनेट को, सबऑर्डिनेट फील कर रहा है कि मैं ये, मुझे ये सब एक्सप्लेन हो रहा है और मुझे ये बताया जा रहा है कि मुझसे क्या एक्सपेक्ट किया जा रहा है, और फिर जो मैं कर रहा हूँ और जो मैं उसमें कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहा हूँ, दे बेसिकली आई थिंक दिस वेरी डायरेक्ट
वकास भाई आप क्या कहते हैं?
रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ दैट।
जी बिल्कुल, ये अगर हम उस पर डाल दें, बंदा करके दे दे तो टीम की होगी, सेल्फ असेसमेंट कर लेगा अपनी होगी।
सही, डेवलप हिमसेल्फ थ्रू हिज टास्क। तो सेल्फ असेसमेंट कर लिया तो अपनी हो गई।
या अपना आपको करके कोई कर देना।
हाँ, तो आप अपने बॉस के लिए
हाँ
फीडबैक दे रहे हैं तो पता चल गया। ठीक है, तो सही भाई, ये क्लियर है, हमें करना चाहिए। क्या ख्याल है इरफान भाई? माई जॉब हेल्प्स मी डेवलप उबूदिया सिफात इन माई सेल्फ। अब ये है कि हमें यूं देखना होगा, क्योंकि वो बार बार मैं ये कह रहा हूँ, स्पेसिफिक टास्क हमें देखना होगा कि हमारा स्पेसिफिक टास्क क्या है। तो अब मैं अमीर ऑफ द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हूँ, कहीं मैं अमीर ऑफ मार्केटिंग एंड सेल्स हूँ, तो ये मेरा स्पेसिफिक टास्क है मार्केटिंग सेल्स में। इसमें मैं ये टास्क मुझे कैसे डेवलप करेगा, या अमीर ऑफ सप्लाई चेन हूँ मैं, तो ये टास्क मुझे कैसे डेवलप करेगा ना। थोड़ा सा इस नज़र से भी देखना चाहिए। जैसे मैं जो अपना काम कर रहा हूँ उसमें तो मेरी डेवलपमेंट ही डेवलपमेंट है। सिफात का जो डेवलपमेंट प्लान था ना, वो सबसे पहले मैंने अपना बना लिया फॉर।
Let me just share, one thing that as a teacher in the madrasa and this, whatever I used to do, like in Tabligh and whatnot. So it's basically, we give talks and speeches and we. But and when you go in Jamaat, of course I should work with you. But how to, communicate, with people that are not on that level was something that was really not at all. We didn't care about that, because look, we have, like it or not, take it. Otherwise, but when I had to, work with people in these in this organization, and work with people on the floor, so then I realized that how to communicate with people. ये बहुत बड़ी मसला है. ये बहुत मुश्किल मसला. And then how to communicate with your kids and your relatives and neighbors and stuff. It's बहुत बड़ी मसला. I can say that I never learned these things. I don't say I know any of it now, but whatever little bit I've been able to, it is actually from being dumped into this task, which I'm not capable of doing. But so I've by default, I had to come to some grips with that and learn how to communicate. So these tasks actually they develop us. But then I had to read a lot of stuff, and then how do we do this? Context of like Hassan Bhai, masla kya karna hua, how do we get Faisal, how do we deal with this situation? So this is actually developing us. And again, I want to stress that, it doesn't matter, your beard is white, you're 80, 90 years old, you're always, and I always give the example of my mother who's 86 years old and always has 3-4 books in her hand at any given time. She never goes to sleep except on a book. And she's always in some class, and she's always teaching some class. Still, to this day. And she's not even a Muslim. May Allah give her hidayah. Wonderful person. So we continue this learning process, it never ends. And the more and more we learn, particularly in ilmi of deen, and I'm sure it's in every topic, the more we learn, the more we come to know, the more we realize how big is the ocean, that we will never reach the bottom. How deep it is, it goes on expanding. And the expanse of which becomes more and more manifest the more that we get it. Allah.
तो ये जब हम इंशाल्लाह नेक्स्ट मीटिंग में मिलेंगे तो इस पे फिर आप लोग कुछ रोशनी डाल दीजिएगा इंशाल्लाह. अपकमिंग टास्क के सफर उसके बारे में भी सोच लीजिएगा.
How to develop ourselves in that safar.
डेवलपमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटी आ रही है.
Thursday some muzakara will also be having. Because we give some muzakara, but this is not. I don't think I need to give any. I think we can.
Specific.
Huh?
Some specifics.
Specifics, inshallah. And this will also help. So from there, Jazakumullah khair. Barakallah.
Safar, you are going someplace?
Yeah, our team is going to Gulf Food Exposition in Dubai. And this is it really the largest food exposition in the world?
One of the, you can say.
It is the large. For
It is?
food it is.
For food it is large.
It's, can you imagine? And this is also a sign of Qiyamah. That the sheep herders will wind up competing in building the high buildings. And that's what you see there.
शेख ज़ैद रोड के ऊपर जाके वहशत होती है आपको. सही बात है. शेख ज़ैद रोड पे.
When I was in Makkah, when I was studying in Makkah, the building that I lived in, it was a 2-3 story building which somebody made. Okay, next to us was a actual fellow who was a sheep herder. Actually, he used to sell sheep and goats in the Suq al-Ghanam in Makkah. Bedouin. And he had a little, what we call haush. He had a little, traditional Meccan house, which was built very simply, and it used to have a little boundary wall. There was a sand house, what they call a courtyard. Okay? He was totally illiterate, but nice guy anyway. So now this house was 2-3 stories, so he started building up another story, another. So I watched right in front of me, الحفاة العراة عالة الرياشة يتطاولون في البنيان. The fellow who taught us this hadith in Sahih Muslim, he was a Saudi guy. And so when this hadith came, he said, "You know who these people are?" He said, "Us." He said, "Me." He's a nice guy. He's a really humble guy also. He's a really funny guy also. Because he had a construction company also. Beside that, he also had he said, "I'm doing that." He said, so anyway, so they're going to Gulf Food. Allah protect them from all of that. A few years ago, they were very simple and very down-to-earth people, and now things have drastically changed. Okay, anyway, so this is our first experience of this type also. And it is ushering in a whole new phase in era, inshallah, perhaps. So what we need to be cognizant of and what objectives we have, what niyat, basically whatever we've heard today, how we apply that in this context of traveling in a fair where the paradigm is the total materialistic paradigm. And we're going to be this one little tiny Ubudiyya based in the sea of material based, Allah help us. Don't worry. One little germ, comes in this big strong body and just wreaks havoc.
Small ant चूंटी जो है वो हाथी को गिरा देती है
बिल्कुल खत्म।
अल्लाह रहम करे।
तो इंशाअल्लाह करे
साथ में इसलिए
स्ट्रॉन्ग मुझे गिराने के लिए
आपको देख के बाकी समझ जाएंगे।
बाकी समझ जाएंगे।
तो इंशाअल्लाह अल्लाह करे this
काबिल हो जाए।
this little ant of al khair will inshallah do something dramatic. Okay.
नेक्स्ट ट्यूसडे कौन तालीम कंडक्ट करेगा शाम को?
फैसल भाई
volunteer who will conduct Islamic Tariqa Tijarat Talim next week
In your absence.
volunteer
आप करेंगे?
आप अच्छी करा रही हैं आप कमेटी
मैं कर लूँगी।
ठीक है उसमें आप कर लीजिए।
Okay. So it's a one-man show next week.
तो ये पढ़ रहे होंगे खुद ही समझ रहे होंगे।
अच्छा, so but this type of presentation will be held back or just
ट्यूसडे को तो है शायद।
अच्छा
शेफ यू आर हियर ना ट्यूसडे?
Tuesday यहाँ नहीं।
अच्छा
अच्छा उसमें
I'm coming back Monday. Monday
No,
night.
before going.
Yeah.
Coming Tuesday.
I'm going Wednesday. 26th. I'm going on 26th.
He's ready. उसके अगले ट्यूसडे भी होगा।
अच्छा
बुध को जाकर फिर
हाँ,
शेफ इस्लामी तरीका तालीम मिलती है।
नेक्स्ट ट्यूसडे के लिए एक सजेशन समथिंग सिंस आप लोग नहीं होंगे हम आगे पढ़ेंगे उसके बाद फिर ज़ाहिर आप लोग होंगे दोबारा वो पढ़ना होगा। नेक्स्ट ट्यूसडे के लिए हम ऐसा करें कि फ्लोर के कुछ सुपरवाइजर्स ले आएं और उनके लेवल की आईटीटी की कोई बात करें। एक सजेशन
सजेशन तो अच्छा है लेकिन
आईटीटी की तो बात आईटीटी का लेवल तो अभी समझ नहीं आ रहा। मैं वापस की बात
मैं इसीलिए कहा उस
क्या हम ये जो प्रेजेंटेशन आज फैसल भाई ने की है फैसल भाई ये वाली प्रेजेंटेशन नहीं आप कर सकते
इसको भी बहुत ही लो करके
क्या ख्याल है?
नहीं उर्दू इंग्लिश का मसला नहीं है समझ का इंटेलेक्चुअल लेवल नहीं है उस लो लेवल पे लाके उनसे बात करें और उनसे
we were doing that. We did that. The executive summary of it.
जी
We went through the whole thing with everybody in the old place. And we were only 15, 20 people. So we used to just break it down to that level.
if that can be done for the next Tuesday.
अगर ये प्रेजेंटेशन हो जाए ना तो ये वो नियत और अज़कार का जिक्र आ जाए।
Maybe at least those we could have a review so that we can we could review those objectives of mal, those points, how many 6, 7 points, whatever they were. Just break it down very simply. Then they're introduced with these concepts. Although all those concepts we've talked about somehow or another, so we could hear it.
एक तारुफ हो जाएगा उसको भी
ये प्रेजेंटेशन का हो जाए तो ज़्यादा अच्छा है इसलिए कि वो तो जारी रखने वाली चीज़ है। वो एक दफ़ा करके छोड़ने वाली चीज़ नहीं है मेरे ख्याल में। तो फिर वो उसका पर्पस जो है ना वो तो अगर उसमें से हम ये कि इसके साथ ही हम 15 मिनट उसे भी दे दें तो अच्छी बात है।
जैसे मनासिब
नहीं उन्हें ये ना लगे कि ये होता इनके एंड पे तो हो ही रहा है हर मन ट्यूसडे को हमें एक दिन बुला के क्योंकि सब गए हुए थे तो हमें एक दिन बुला के
तो
सारे
समझाया जा सकता है।
लेकिन ये जो प्रेजेंटेशन है ये तो मेरा ख्याल है बड़ी
ये पहले भी
टू द पॉइंट और पर्टिनेंट नहीं होगी सही भाई, क्या ख्याल है?
जी
ये वाली
है सही, बस थोड़ा सा वही अगर सिंपल करके वो
नहीं,
थोड़ा सा नहीं, काफी।
इसी को ही सिंपल करेंगे और आप
एचडीएस आप एक्सपर्ट हैं, आप समझते हैं अगर ठीक है, नहीं तो फिर इसी तरह से चलाते हैं जैसे आप मुनासिब समझें। एक सजेशन दी, एक मशवरा था।
तो देख लेते हैं इसमें से क्या रेलेवेंट
जैसे आप समझें।
चीज ऐसी निकला इंशाल्लाह। लेकिन ये प्रेजेंटेशन तो कर ही लेते हैं।
असल में ये जो मतलब मैं वैसे ही एक बात कह रहा हूँ, जो माल की जो हम बातें पढ़ रहे हैं ना, ये जब तक पूरी इंटायरिटी में पढ़ के समझी ना जाए तो ये गलत तरफ भी आपको गलत तरफ की सोच डेवलप कर सकती है। एक मुमकिन आउटकम देखिए ना, वो कहते हैं ना वो सलमान भाई, रोड टू हेल इज पेव्ड विद गुड इंटेंशंस। तो ये काम भी हो जाता होता है बात।
ठीक है सर,
एक मिनट बाद में दूसरी मीटिंग।
अच्छा हाँ हाँ, वो तो बात है।
45 मिनट पहले हम
Can I get a copy of this presentation? ये मेरा email है, इस पे लिखा हुआ है।
आज तो मीटिंग ही खेल ली।
And hopefully it will be a refined edition.
So you, mashallah, you do this every Tuesday? You
Every
get
Tuesday, yeah.
This group.
If you like, fly down every Tuesday and join us.
Maybe
We're
once,
gonna-
once a month maybe I can do that.
Definitely.
Most welcome.